Hey, I'm Michael Dorinda,
And I'm Jake Bennett.
and welcome to episode 182 of the North Meet South web podcast.
Hey.
Let's just assume you heard it. I don't know why you don't hear it anymore, but it definitely played.
I don't know either. It's fine. It's fine. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 182. We're going to skip the chit chat. Do you know why? Do you want to know why? I'll tell you why. I'm starting the chit chat, but we're going to skip it.
Do it.
I think I'm entering that stage of life where you're just perpetually tired all the time. I think it's just how it is. I don't think there's any coming back from it. I think it is just called life. And I think that's where I'm at right now. And so I'm like, you know what? Let's just get into it. Like, no need to, pretend like we've got limitless energy here. Like, let's get down to the nuts and the bolts. But that'd be missing one of my favorite parts of the show, which is catching up with you, Michael. How are things going, my friend?
This is 2 weeks in a row that you've been like tired, which is very unusual. So,
dude, it is. I think it. Well,
it could be something like it could be
the changing of the weather.
Yeah.
I think that maybe it is. Maybe that's what it is.
We had like this pocket, so we're heading into spring now, and Australians, we just say like the 1st of September is spring. We don't hang around for like the spring equinox or whatever the heck. It's not the 22nd of September. We start all of our seasons on the 1st of the month when they on the quarter that they roll around in. So we're heading into spring now, and because it's spring, it's like sun, but it's also rainy, but then it's cold, but then it's sunny, but it's not warm. And so I had this pocket of time on the weekend where I was like, I got to mow the lawn now because the weeds are getting out of control. And I got to do it so that when the lawn stuff, which I just shared a photo of the box that this came in the cash money from, it's a local company called LawnHub, which sounds similar to another thing that is also a hub, and their branding.
Sure, yeah, GitHub.
Their branding,
yeah, sure, yeah.
Yes, definitely. And their branding matches color, like all of the naming of stuff is very much in line with the other hub. And so lawnhub.com.au. So I've got their stuff had come in today, and so I had to mow the lawn because you're not supposed to like spray. I've got this spray stuff. So you're not supposed to fertilize the lawn or do any of that kind of stuff within 48 hours or 24 hours, whatever it is, of mowing, because you want to catch the weeds as they're in their growth cycle. So I did this on Saturday thinking I better do it now because it's going to rain on Sunday. And then it didn't rain on Sunday, and it didn't rain on Monday, and it hasn't so far rained today, but it's supposed to rain this afternoon and all night today and then tomorrow and Thursday. So I've got
to play. Yep. You're playing the game.
And it's like, okay, so I want to do this, and you're supposed to do all of this lawn care, in September ahead of the growth period. And it's like, I need to mow the lawn to get it ready so that the weeds are growing, to then hit it with not the weed killer, but this is like a growth stuff that it's supposed to like, it's a wetting agent and a fertilizer that's supposed to spring the lawn into growth. And of course the weeds, which are also there. And then as the weeds are growing on day 10, you then hit it with the weed killer. Now, I don't know how you're supposed to plan this, because how do I know in 10 days, especially with the fits and starts of spring, when the rain is going to come? Because you're not supposed to apply this stuff
right before rain or anything like that.
Right before rain.
You're not dry for a couple of days. Yeah.
So I don't know.
It's
so
tough,
I'm just hoping it works out, right?
Yeah, we've got a buddy. I've got a buddy who does he's really big into lawns, and he's like, he goes out in the spring and he measures his ground soil temperature. And so he'll if it's before, you want to get your pre-emergent weed control down between 58 and 61 or something like that. And if you go, I don't know. So anyway, I just tell him extreme. Hey, dude, text me when you're putting your stuff down. That's what I always say. Just text me when you're putting your stuff down, and then I'll do it too. Because he lives, 5 miles away. So I'm like, all right, chances are, if his soil temperature is all right, mine's going to be about there too. So
it'd be about the same.
Yeah. Sure. Anyway, that's a big help. But anyway,
so doing that at the moment, but trying to fit it in with the weather is ridiculous. And so because I mowed the lawn, even though it was wet, it was still enough to kick up the pollen. And so now hay fever season is upon me. Hay fever it is.
So here it is.
Great. So this is my thing. I wake up in the morning feeling terrible, not wanting to get out of bed because my head hurts and my nose is congested, and we're back in that. Fortunately, I know, because I did mow the lawn And it is that time of year that I'm like, it is just hay fever. I'm not
That's what it
playing
is. Yeah, it's not
the
something
COVID or
else.
hay
Yeah,
fever game.
yeah.
So I
Yep.
feel rubbish in the morning. But
The COVID or hay fever game.
Ree just had septoplasty because she's always had bad sleep. Like she'll sleep for 12 hours, wake up and still be tired. And so, gets to a point where you finally want to do something about this. You're not going to just accept that this is what it is. And so she went and saw an ENT, an ear, nose, and throat specialist. And they said, you are waking as you sleep, but it's not enough that you need to start looking at a CPAP, face mask while you sleep kind of thing. This option of this septoplasty was to go in and to realign her turbinates because she had a deviated septum in her nose. So they go in there and like day surgery, and they go in there with a drill and they go, do whatever they do and sort it all out.
No.
So it was all like day surgery, but she was under for it, of course. They don't do this while you're awake. And she woke up with, like no bruising. They do it pretty good these days because, when you start mucking around in there around the place, it's like right near the surface. So you would assume there'd be bruising and stuff, and I'd have questions to answer for a few days after. Why's your wife got black eyes and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah,
but
just stay home, honey. Just stay home. I'll go do all the stuff.
So she was like, she had a week off work, which was nice. Took care of the kids, and it was funny though because I said to her halfway through Saturday, like she had this surgery on Thursday, and I said to her halfway through Saturday, I said, look, I know that you had the kids for a whole week while I was in Denver. However, you had the kids for a whole school week where you get them up in the morning, you take them to school,
you say goodbye, yes,
and you say bye-bye, and then you see them again in the afternoon. Which don't get me wrong, it's still but don't get me wrong, it's still hard work. But there's 7 hours out of the day where they're not there. Yeah, I had them Saturday, right? I took them grocery shopping in the morning. We got home at lunchtime, and I'm like, crap, it is only lunchtime, and they're still going. Like, they want to keep going. I'm like, I was so tired at the end of that weekend, like more tired than I've ever been. But long-winded way of saying, like, maybe you've got sleep problems, and this is why you're feeling tired.
Maybe I do. Yeah, or maybe it's just a seasonal thing too. I don't know. I'm not sure. That is a fair question. I do.
Just don't be telling me it's still a seasonal thing come December, come March.
Yeah, okay.
You'd be like,
fair enough.
You've got to look into it.
Let's keep checking in. Yeah, let's keep checking in on this. We'll see what's going on here. And I think this is a good, we'll make this a recurring section of the show here. So, Hey, with that out of the way, I am actually really interested to hear about something you've been chatting about with me recently. Which is some of these fake HTTP stuff. So, we've talked about this on the show a number of times, this idea of like this gateway pattern and how we structure it at Wilbur, where, to give you a quick rundown, we will create a gateway class, which is responsible for newing up a client, setting up the base URL, any tokens that would need to be retrieved or pulled from the config to set up that client. And then we will have methods that make calls to endpoints and handle any specifics around that endpoint, whether it's caching or whether it's rate limiting or whether it's, massaging a response that we get back or handling an erroneous response and all those things, which is great. But then what we'll do is we'll bind that in the container, and we'll bind that to, an interface, right? And that interface will be implemented not only on the HTTP side of things, but also we'll have a fake that returns data that we have pulled probably from the API, gotten a real response, and then we'll sort of load that into the fake, and we'll have different responses a la magic tokens, right? So, Stripe back in the day, you'd have 4242 gives you a valid response, and 4141 gives you an invalid CVV, whatever. So we do something similar to that. But I know that you guys are big Saloon users, which if you don't know what that is, listener, you should definitely go check that out. Sam Correa has an amazing package called Saloon, very popular nowadays. And I'm interested to hear kind of what you've been kicking around with that. So you've been chatting about it a little bit, and I want to get a clear picture of what exactly it is you're talking about and if it solves some of the same problems or what you got. So go. It's all you, my friend.
So yeah, we're doing this integration at the moment where we had like some old library that was like, it's long since been deprecated, no longer maintained. So we had copied the vendor code into our application code to integrate with Salesforce. And that was, to push leads in there, to pull contacts out, things like that.
Is it like a PHP Salesforce SDK sort of idea?
Yeah, basically.
Is what it was? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
But it was, it was like PHP, very, very PHP 5 code. But yeah, long since unmaintained. And at some point in the last 18 months, I think, like fairly recently, we moved to using this other library called Forest, Forrest. Okay. And it allowed us to directly run SOQL, so Salesforce Object Query Language, I think it is, which is like the version of SQL that you can use to query Salesforce. And we thought this would be a great solution. We can write the queries ourselves, we can do it. But there was not really a good testing layer for it, to the point where we were using Mockery and we were creating mock expectations that, this method would be called with these arguments, it would return this stuff. And the problem with that, I mean, number one, don't test what you don't own kind of thing. Yep. But number two, mocks, and I know that JMac has been on an adventure trying to improve this in, I think Laravel specifically, and he's gone off and he's been doing other things that have come up in the meantime, but he's been trying to improve the messaging around when a mock expectation fails. Because when a mock expectation fails, it just tells you like mockery _ some like hash or whatever that it's generated for this thing. It's saying expected this, but it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And that's
it's very, it's not clear at all.
It's horrible. It tells you that the expectation is not correct, but you don't know why. And so then what you end up doing is, like, if you're a quote unquote real developer, you will go and fire up Xdebug and you would follow through and look at all these things. If you're a Laravel developer, you go and start DDing all over the place to see like what was actually in this object, and then you're looking like what is different. And whether you're using Xdebug or you're using DD, you still have to look at like what is my expectation and what is in the thing. And some of these Salesforce objects are quite large, so we've got 20 or 30 things in here, and you've got to look at like what's missing, what's added, what's different. Is it in a different order? Is it somewhere else in the response?
Right, yeah.
It's a whole thing. And so I was pouring through the Saloon docs a while back for some stuff, and I saw in there that someone had written a Salesforce SDK using Saloon. I thought, great, I'm pulling that in immediately. I don't even have to read the docs. I don't need to know any more about it. If it's written with Saloon, it's going to be good. And what that has enabled us to do, obviously, is to use Saloon under the hood, which makes testing so much better because we can use Saloon fake. We can say, I'm expecting these requests to go out. I'm expecting these responses to come back. We can do Saloon fakes. We can, we can record
in
fixtures.
The testing layer, you can
in
record
the testing
fixtures
layer.
And replay them back.
Fantastic. It has improved things a great deal to the point where like, okay, we're going to replace this Forest library with the Saloon SDK. But as part of this, I've been doing some exploration, which is like, I guess, threefold into how do we do this kind of stuff with local development. Like, I don't want to be handing out.
That is the big question.
I don't want to be handing out keys to people to access Salesforce. We spin up and spin down Salesforce test environments as needed. Like, we don't typically keep them around. So you might have credentials to do something now, but that environment might be gone at some point in the future when you come back to it. Obviously, we don't want to test in production because you end up littering your Salesforce instance with all of these test accounts and things like that. And so I started going down the path of, okay, what does this look like to actually create a fake? And you and I have spoken about this, as you said previously, where maybe you can just call Saloon fake inside a service provider somewhere and record some fixtures and do all this kind of stuff. And so this then led to my second point of exploration, which was using AI, because I'm a big AI boy now, and I like to play with stuff. So I've been using Claude, and I've been with opencode, which is from the SST guys, Dax and Adam, who are part of the Terminal Coffee empire. Have been building out this opencode thing, which is kind of like, it's like Claude Code. It's a terminal application, but it allows you to hook into different providers and access different models through those providers. So we use GitHub Copilot, which means we can't use Claude, as I understand it. Claude is to access the Anthropic, I think, the OpenAI, whichever it is, their Claude service using their Claude CLI. And then I think Cursor's got one, and all these other companies have got one. So what opencode allows us to do is to authenticate against GitHub, And then we have access to whatever models we have access to inside of GitHub Copilot. So I can use Claude to then do this stuff. So I've been in planning mode. I spend like 45 minutes just going through like, I want to do this, like blah, 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 come up with whatever we want to do. Switch to build mode and say, okay, now go build that. And so what I've been doing, and it's been literally days because I'm like feeling my way through it. I'm not necessarily liking the output, or it's partially implementing things. So we which I think anyone that's been using AI for any period of time knows that this is kind of the process. Treat it as a junior developer that you're pairing with, and that's typically how you're going to go. So we have been building out a fake gateway, as you've done with Stripe, where in some instances, like if we want to do a search for a contact or an account, there's like, here are the key phrases that you pass through. Search for Michael and you'll get like 3 results back that are like Michael A, Michael B, Michael C. Sure. If you search for Michael Dorinda, it will return a single result, Michael Dorinda. And so we've done this. I reached out to Sam Curray, the author of Saloon, and I said, what is the approach? Like, how do we do this? And he said, there's a few people that have asked about this recently. And like a day after I'd asked about it, Alex Six from Zillow, who spoke at Laracon US, he had pinged Sam on X and was like, hey, is this possible? And so, we had this conversation about, we're exploring this at the moment. And what it essentially boils down to is hooking into Saloon's global middleware and putting our own handler in there that basically looks at, okay, is this enabled? Is our fake gateway enabled? So with an environment variable and a config switch, if this is enabled, everything should go through our Salesforce mock handler.
Yeah.
And then I've iterated on this a few times where I've landed with like this registry pattern approach where we just register all of the response handlers we want. And each response class is then responsible for providing its own should handle method. And it will look at the pending request and say, okay, is this to an endpoint that I am of interest of? And so we've got 20 or 30 of these at the moment. And it will just like spin through them all and go, okay, this is a post request to the contact standard object endpoint. I'm going to intercept that request and I'm going to return this response. And so we're then using Faker to just send back fake data. And then where you can seed Faker with a value, right? So that you get deterministic fake data back. So what we do is we take so deterministic data is where like it's pseudo random. Like it is random data, but it will always be the same random data based on that seed. So you pass it a number from like 1 to whatever the upper limit is that it supports. And then it will seed the random number generator so that when you call Faker whatever, internally it will process that, it'll go through its array of 50 names. And if you've got a seed of 3, it will always return the 7th value from that list of 50 names for first name. And then the next time you call it, it will always return the same value. And then when you are developing things, if you search for Michael, you're going to get the same Michael back every single time on every single machine. Because if you're searching for Michael and you get a different fake value back, in the UI context, it doesn't make sense, But with deterministic seeding, it means, okay, here is the value that I want to base all of my random data on, and it will always do that. So what we do is we look at the body of that pending request. We take all of the inputs, we join them together, and then PHP has this function called CRC32, which will take a string and it will compute an integer value that represents what that is. And then we pass that value into Faker's seed method so that we're always getting this data back. And so we've now built out a fairly robust implementation that will always give us like pseudo random data, but in a consistent way. So like if we're searching for something, we can build our expectations on it. We can build tests on it because we know that like the fake data won't change every time we run the test. We know that we're always going to get the same set of data back. So we can actually write tests against all of these endpoints with the fake gateway enabled, knowing that we're going to get back this specific data.
So when you say you seed it, you're not seeding a database because they're not models in your application. You're seeding the responses that are going to come back from your mock handler for Salesforce.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's basically like with Faker, you're almost creating, I mean, it's not a database, but it's almost a database because it's pseudo-random. I mean, it's deterministic, right? So when I'm hearing you say like you're referencing like an ID, it's basically like you're referencing an ID in a database that actually does not exist because it's just seeded fake data essentially. So you could think of it almost as a sort of database, I suppose. I mean, it's not a database, but like same idea, right? Where it's deterministic, you can write tests against it because it's not going to change. So it's almost seeded data, but you don't have models backing this stuff. Correct. So you have to use some other sort of mechanism to do so. Yeah. Okay.
So you're seeding the random number generator that PHP uses, which is using like empty rand or whatever under the hood. Empty, like it's a PHP function under the hood. So if you always want to get, this is quoting from the Faker docs, if you want to always get the same generated data, for instance, when using Faker for unit testing purposes, the generator offers a seed method which seeds the random number generator. And the crux of that is that calling the same script twice with the same seed produces the same results.
Interesting. Okay.
And this is then why it becomes helpful in a UI context, where if you are seeding based on the inputs, no matter what you put in there, like if I put Jake in there, or I put Michael in there, or I put Eric in there, or I put Sam in there, or whatever, as long as the inputs match, you will always get the same results back, which makes the testing a bit more predictable. If you hand that off to a QA team or for testing or manual whatever, that it's not going to make people stop and think, wait, what happened there? Because I got two different results back. It's like, no, if I search for Jake, I guess the same set of results come back.
Right. So it's like the only benefit that you lose of fake data is that the randomness of it is sometimes a bit of a fuzz test against, can your code handle values that are not typical sort of deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the idea of like Faker, which is like, hey, it should be able to generate any value and it should always work. But it's like, there are other considerations to be made too. And so you're just making a trade-off. You're saying, well, we're okay with losing some of the benefit of that randomness for the predictability of having deterministic values that are getting seeded in here, and for all the other reasons you mentioned. Interesting. Yeah. I've never actually heard of this, so I'll check into that. That sounds really cool.
And so in the context of like actually opening up the application in the browser and like using it, I think it makes much more sense than having totally random data. Because if you think about it, if I'm hitting Salesforce and searching for Jake, well, I expect Jake's data to always come back. I want to see the same results. And so that's where this comes in. And like this stuff has been in Faker, I don't know, since forever. And the reason that like I know this fancy word deterministic is because I built this avatar generator for Laracon AU, where I wanted it to be random, but I wanted it to always be the same for a given input. So if I'm going to generate an image,
it's almost like functional, right? I mean, it's almost like functional programming, where it's like given the same inputs, you should expect to get the same outputs every time.
Yeah. And so that has worked really well in that context and provides us like much more useful output. I'm not sure. I still need to do a little bit of finagling to make sure that I'm actually happy with what has been built, because largely it has been just like driving the AI and letting it come up with stuff and fixing things as it comes. But it's been pretty good in terms of building the code, finding problems. Like I've got it into this loop now where we put into our Claude file, make sure that you always run PHP unit on the test, make sure you always run CS fixer, make sure you always run stand. So if you've introduced any violations, like it'll go back and fix those things as well, which has been very helpful. So I think the code is robust. I think then the third exploration is, okay, we've built this thing. Is this something that we can, I don't know if we can package it up or if we produce a set of guidelines or something that go, okay, now for the other things that we wanted to have mock gateways for, for a lender integration with a bank or for a provider of like, Equifax or something like that, where we're doing these lookups. Well, we want the same data to always come back, but we don't want to hit Equifax because that costs money every time you do that.
Again, and like you said, it's deterministic, and it's like you don't have to spin up an Equifax non-production environment sort of deal. Like it's like you just get all those benefits that you're talking about. Now, there are, there does end up being some drawbacks, but I mean, there's drawbacks with the current approach. So you just have to, it's the trade-off, right?
Yeah. So in our tests, right? In our tests, we would still want to do this kind of stuff with actual fake data. And that's where we would dip into the Saloon fakes, and we would use our fixtures and all of that kind of stuff. In terms of actually using it by hand in the browser, then the exploration was, okay, how do I build this infrastructure where I've got like a config file, and okay, here is Salesforce, but now here is Equifax, here is Bank A, here is Bank B, here is Lender A, all of these kind of things, and I just configure them in there, and they'll register themselves, and then they'll find, okay, this is the thing that needs to hit this, and it all goes into Saloon's global middleware and whatever needs to deal with any given request, and we can build these over time. So I think I'm happy enough with it that I think that it will work, and it seems to cover all of the scenarios that exist currently, until we start using it in practice and figuring out, okay, how do we create the next gateway, the next mock, and actually using it. That will be the determining factor about if this approach is actually robust enough to be that flexible across the board. So we'll see. We might revisit that in a few episodes and see if we've made any progress on it.
Yeah, it's like you're trying to look into the crystal ball and determine what the future is going to hold, right? It's like, it's so funny. Like we talked to the dev team about this, and they're totally on board with that approach, where it's like, sometimes you just got to ship it and see. You know what I mean? Like just push the button, and like, you're not going to have the final answer, but like, we're not building pianos here. Like, we can go in and change the code. Like, it's not a big deal. You know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't have to be perfect the first time. It just has to be good enough that it's not going to break everything. And if it's good enough, then it's like, you can make modifications as you go, right? But trying to make predictions about how it's going to be used everywhere is just impossible. And I feel like my IT team, they are on that train. They're like, we have to have all the variables solved before we push the button. It's like, you don't. You don't. You just need to have enough information to make a good decision, and then push it and see what happens, and then learn and move from there. But you can make decisions and make changes a lot faster that way than you can hemming and hawing and waiting around and trying to get the perfect answer. And it's like, you won't have the perfect answer until you actually start moving. Then you're going to figure it out. So, but the other part I was going to say is like this registration piece that you're talking about, where like you're registering all the different responses and things like that. And I'm sure you'll find a way to organize this well. But like right now, two things. Number one, they're probably tied to actual endpoints, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so each response has its own should handle method, and it gets past the pending request object. So it goes and looks like it. Because then you've got access to the request itself, and you can figure out, do I need to intercept this or not? And depending on what it is, sometimes it's enough to just look at the endpoint. Sometimes we want to look at the endpoint and the body and go, because then we've got, for authentication, for example, we've got an email, like a specific email address for a successful login. We've got a specific email address for a failed login, a specific email address for like an account that doesn't exist, like all of these kind of things. So some of it gets a bit grim. Some of these methods have got some creative regexes that Claude has written in there, which may or may not be the most appropriate course of action. But within the context of each of those response classes, you can do whatever you want to determine if it should be handled.
Yeah, and so I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out, is like, how do you co-locate the code that's going to be handling, or that's going to be responsible for figuring all that out? And I'm sure it's like, you can have like some class DODOP generate, or a class DODOP register handlers or something like that, where you can kind of just say like, for this particular type of response, we're going to have a class named this that's going to be, by convention, it's going to match the naming like this, but it's going to be called, blah, 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 response register handlers class. And then, you just call that, and there you go. And so you can break it up, so it's not like some massive just config file, essentially. There's actually some testability even around your registrations and things like that, if you needed it to be as sophisticated as that. But
and at the moment, this like registry that we have, it just like, you pass it a namespaced path, like app/gateways/Salesforce/fake/responses, right? And it will go and look in there, and it will look through, like, it just looks through all of the files in there. And if it's a non-abstract class and it implements an interface that we've got on there, it will then register it as a handler. and then the Saloon is then responsible for passing all of those things through and figuring out, should I be intercepting this request? So it has been done in such a way where like the registry will go and just like discover all of these things automatically and then just slip them in there. So definitely don't run it in production. You could be registering like, dozens to hundreds of classes for all of your Saloon implementations. But locally, like, it doesn't matter too much. Our machines are so overpowered and over provisioned that having this do it, and especially if you're just enabling them one by one. So there's like the top level is this thing that spins through the config and then registers all the handlers. And then each handler is responsible for then going and registering all of its responses. So if you've got them all disabled, it'll just spin through that top level 4 or 5 or 10 or however many integrations you've got fairly quickly, and it'll just do nothing. Like, we just filter them out of the collection. So nice. I would like to share some code in time once I've happy that it is actually a sensible approach. But early indications with like just the Salesforce mock seems to be good. The proof will be in the pudding of whether or not it actually extends to other handlers. And I've been trying to kind of guide the AI to make sure that this is extensible. And anytime we start duplicating things, it's like, okay, let's pull this out. Let's hoist this up to the top level namespace. Let's, make sure this is all possible, because it is something that is in my mind that like we need to be able to do this. So I think the main thing is just Salesforce is a very large thing. Like, there's a big surface area of things that you can do. And so there's lots of overlap to the same endpoints. But when you've got discrete endpoints, it's much easier to have like a common thing that just like injects fake data based on the request kind of thing. So I feel good about it, but I'm still cautious about how well that works as we start integrating more. So we'll see how that goes in time.
That's exciting, dude. Yeah, I'm excited to hear about that. That sounds really cool. So we'll follow up on that in future shows. A couple of things I wanted to share real quick before we wrap this one up. Bond is a new thing by Philip Gagniks. I don't know how to say his last name. Anyway, he's a Livewire and Alpine dude, and he just released this library, Bond, which is this interesting way to give you essentially like fully reactive, optimistic UIs on the front end that are also Livewire aware. So you get the best of front ends, like with modern JavaScript tooling, like being able to do includes and things like that, and bundling and all those pieces. And then also all the benefits of Livewire. And so in his demo that he put out a video today about this, he goes through and shows with this counter component, it's fully reactive, and it's like he can plus on this counter. And then in the bottom, he has like, here's what the Livewire server rendered value is. And you can see that on the front end, he's able to click it as fast as he wants. And the front end stays reactive and it doesn't make those back end calls. And then it sort of like lazily updates that background amount. And then when it makes a round trip, it ends up updating that thing on the front end as well. But your front end allows you to continue to go just as fast as the browser front end will allow you to, as long as the user's machine is able to catch up or keep up with your JavaScript front end interactions. It will take care of sort of eventually syncing in the back end, which is really, really cool. We've needed this in a couple projects, and he's got some. It's just very interesting. It's got TypeScript support. Super cool. So Vite basically will pull out. Go ahead.
You'll have to send me a link so I can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. I will, and I'll send you the video that he made here. It's really good. Wilbur Powery talked about it today in our dev chat. So there's the video, and then I will send you the open source repo as well. Both look really, really cool. It's a 9-minute video. You should definitely check it out. Really well done. He seems like he essentially manuscripted his video that he was going to do. It's 9 minutes, and it's just pure code. Like, nice. Doesn't stumble over one word. It's so well rehearsed. It's the best video on a new thing that I've seen people, somebody put out in a while. It's really, really good. So shout out, Philip. Good job. Secondly, we've been talking about our journey at our company of restructuring a lot of our roles and permissions and things like that, and how we've sort of split the responsibilities between basically saying our application's only responsibility is to check permissions with gate checks.
Yes.
And then what we've done is we have bound those particular abilities to AD groups. And we've done that using an AD, I mean Active Directory. We've done that using enums and enum attributes, which I swear is one of the most productive secret ninja combinations ever. Enums with attributes is just awesome. It's so cool. It allows you to have like type safety and also to bind additional pieces of information directly next to enums, which I just absolutely love. So really, really cool combination. I'm liking that. And I feel like we've arrived at some conclusions about how we've found to best structure some of those things, specifically regarding like departments, job titles, and stuff like that. So I'm interested to share some of those maybe in a couple weeks and talk about that and some of the discoveries we've made, and maybe talk about this bond thing too. We are right now in the process of creating a two-way interactive texting experience through SMS. So people who want to get hold of our agents, they can do so through SMS. We're using Twilio Conversations, but we're pulling a lot of the Twilio Conversations stuff local. We're saving records on our side. Twilio is like the source of truth, but we'll pull those down to our side. So we have database records, then can basically enrich that data with our own data. And we're using a Livewire front end. We're building out a Livewire front end, which is great. But this idea of like that optimistic UI is very attractive because sometimes it can feel a little bit laggy. You know what I mean? If you're doing like high volume interactions back and forth, or you're trying to say like who's, which one of our team members is currently in this conversation, how are we able to, using presence channels or some of those things, sometimes it can feel a little bit laggy, or notifications if a new thing comes in, you have to kind of loop over a bunch of stuff in the background. Anyway, I'm interested to see if this is something we can start using. And since Wilbur Power is the lead on that project and he's the one who discovered this library, I'm interested to see if this is something we might actually use in the next couple of weeks as well. So looking forward to that in the next show, I suppose.
Yeah, I saw Ash Allen, I think tweeted something out about putting methods on enums.
Okay.
To return a label for something, because your cases and your names don't always match up with what or how you want to present that to the user. So he was talking about having a to label method for things that would then return something that you could put into your UI as opposed to what you're storing in the database. And then someone had mentioned in there that you can create attributes here that target the constants, but enum members in that case, where you could put like a pound square bracket label whatever, and then you've got labels available through that as well. So I think that's as you say, a really powerful combination and gives you a lot of flexibility across enums, not just like I don't have to create a label method here or a to label and then a map and then match the value to whatever. You can just put it straight there on the enum member itself, and then you can do it on a case by case basis. Like you would expose the label method directly and it would say like, hey, is there an attribute here? We'll return the value of the attribute. Otherwise, you might do like a string snake or a string title or whatever it is to have some fallback where you want to do it that way. So I
really, really powerful combo.
I do think enums and attributes go together like lamb and tuna fish.
Yeah, lamb and tuna fish. I've not heard that. That is a new one on me, and I love it. I will add it to my list of things that I tell my friends. I will tell my friends when we talk about Australian colloquialisms. So this is not an Australian thing. Lamb and tuna fish. Oh,
lamb and tuna fish was it was a character. It was Big Daddy. It was a character that Rob Schneider played in that movie.
Okay.
He played like, as Rob Schneider did back then, he played like a foreign, nondescript foreign character. And
hilarious.
I'll put a link in the show notes.
All right, I'll have to check it out. Hey, what episode are we on? 182?
That's right.
182, folks. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. You can find show notes for this episode at northmeetsouth.audio/182. Hit us up on X or on Blue Sky at Jacob Bennett, at Michael Dorenda, or at North South Audio. And of course, if you liked the show, we'd really appreciate it if you'd rate it up in your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars would be incredible. Thanks, folks. Until next time, we will see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.